Greetings, everybody. Nikki Brown here. No matter where you are and what part of the world you are in, I hope that you are having a good day. Okay, another serious topic, right? um, so I've already done daughters with daddy issues. So now I'm going to do the men. And this article actually comes from thegoodmenproject.com. And as always, I will read I'll read the article and then I will add my own commentary in between. So, this is 6 signs you're a man with daddy issues. Again, this is from the Good Men Project. The conversation no one else is having. I love this site. How to overcome anger toward your father and become your own man. Interesting, right? I feel like I might be a little bit too close, too intimate. Is that better? Yeah. Because it's a more serious topic. It's better to create a little bit more space. I feel like I was a little too close. All right, y'all. A lot of people don't consider this, but people say that women are emotional, but men can be just as emotional, if not more so, because anger is an emotion. And if you don't learn how to balance out that emotion, it's no different than a woman being emotional, honestly. And some people may disagree with that, and I get it, but it is what it is. Okay, so the article starts out by saying, my 12-year-old son, it was a rite of passage for me to introduce him to Luke Skywalker, Obi-Wan Kenobi, and Darth Vader. I saw the first Star Wars movie with my dad at about the same age. My Star Wars experience as a boy was about the adventure, rescuing Princess Leia, wielding a lightsaber, attacking the Death Star in an X-Wing. Now, as a man, I get caught up in the father-son dynamic of the original trilogy. I can relate to Luke as he learns that Vader is his father in The Empire Strikes Back and come face to face with his daddy. Oh, and come face to face with his daddy issues. My apologies. I'm trying to... There we go. Okay, that's better. Okay. In Luke's final duel with Vader in Return of the Jedi, the battle isn't about who's better with a lightsaber. The real battle is over Luke's true identity. Vader already revealed himself as Luke's father. Luke's dilemma is whether or not he'll be Vader's son. Luke and Vader's biological relationship is already settled. What's unsettled is whether or not Luke and Vader share the same character. Darth Vader says they do. Together they can rule the galaxy. Luke says they don't. He'll never submit to the dark side of the Force. So we can either exist more on our light side or our dark side, right? Some people also know it as your north node versus your south node, or good versus evil. It can be looked at in different ways, but in Star Wars, it's the dark side of the Force, right? Or the dark side of the universe, or the dark side of, you know, righteous versus unrighteous. Some people even say right or wrong, right? Or the higher self versus the lower self. There are, again, various terms or ways of looking at it. In the final seconds of their lightsaber battle, Luke gives in to Vader's taunting. Luke allows his anger to take control. In a wild rage, Luke clashes with Vader. Luke's lightsaber finds an opening in Vader's defense, and his saber severs Vader's hand from his arm. As Vader lays on his back, waiting for Luke to kill him, smoldering wires protrude from Vader's forearm. At the moment, Luke is reminded that he is part machine. He realizes he is, in sense, like his father. Even to the point where sometimes, especially once you have children or deal with children, we'll say, oh, I'm not going to do that because my mother did that or my father did that. And sometimes, as much as we try to escape it, we end up subconsciously or unconsciously repeating the same behavior because it's a learned behavior. And when certain situations trigger us, our normal instinct, well, I shouldn't say instinct, our learned behavior kicks in and we respond the same way we were responded to. And then it just gets passed down from generation to generation, right? And whether intentional or unintentional, unless you want to change the behavior, you just instinctively start to repeat it. Now, your kid might point it out to you and say, that hurt my feelings. And then you may remember, oh, I said I was going to do that. And you may make an effort to do better. But some people don't. Some people say, oh, that's how I was raised. It was done to me. So I'm just going to do it to my kids and repeat the same behavior and not taking into consideration when it was done to you for the first time and you didn't like it. And it hurt your feelings. So now you're hurting someone else's feelings. And repeating that same toxic cycle. Many men, so facing the dark side. Many men deny any resemblance to their father, but most are like their fathers in some way, shape, form, or fashion, especially if he was emotionally distant or physically distant, physically absent, right? If he was emotionally and mentally unavailable, you usually take that into relationships with the people that you deal with, whether it be platonic, familiar, or romantic, right? Underneath that denial is a deep-rooted hurt and anger that they carry on their shoulders because they entered adulthood with unsatisfied needs in their father-son relationship. This is not something that people make up. This really, it really exists. Even if people deny it, oh, ain't nothing wrong with me, I'm fine. But really, you're an angry, hot mess. And I'm not even trying to be funny. Some people they don't even realize it. And you can't even say anything to them. So a lot of times the best thing to do is to distance yourself if you don't want to deal with the toxic behavior. Either that or you just deal with the toxic behavior and you, again, make it seem like, oh, well, that's just how people are. But no, that's not how people are. And that person can heal and get help. I was one of those men, the author says. I went to great lengths to avoid any contact with my father. My hurt and resentment was so strong. If I avoided being around him, I could avoid feeling the hurt and anger. Rather than deal with my feelings about my father, I kept them stuffed inside. But they showed up in other relationships, especially in my marriage. It started on my honeymoon. My wife was homesick and wanted to go home early. I took it personally and discovered that I had an explosive temper. Over the months and years ahead, I became verbally and physically abusive. When a man who doesn't want to be like his father realizes he is, there is at least a moment of crisis. To deny any comparison is to become more like the father than he doesn't want to be. I realized that for myself, right? The more you say, oh, I don't want to be like that person, I'm never going to be like that person, I'm not going to do that again, you end up repeating those same behaviors, sometimes unknowingly, until you tap yourself on the shoulder or somebody else taps you on the shoulders and says, hey, that's not right. To deny any comparison is to become more like the father that he doesn't want to be. To accept the comparison and see the resemblance is to open the door to positive change. Challenged by the Emperor to finish off Vader, Luke refuses. He sees past his anger, past Vader's dark exterior. He accepts the similarities he had with Darth Vader and knows he doesn't have to embrace Vader's evil qualities. Behind Vader's hard mask, Luke trusts there is still a seed of goodness. It wasn't that easy for me. I held on to my anger for a long time. It's called resentment. Resentment of our father sets us up to have father issues. We'll do battle with these issues as long as we remain angry. I call them daddy issues because they start in childhood and prevent us from developing a healthy identity as a man. Some people automatically say that it's forgiveness, right? And in forgiveness, they say, oh, you should just forgive, meaning you should forgive and just talk to that person and deal with that person and their toxic behavior. That's not how that works. Because as long as you're around this person and you don't heal from this situation, you will continue to be resentful because they're still exhibiting the same behavior, right? This person hasn't changed. This person is still the same way. So yes, you can accept them for who they are, the way that they are, but even being in that toxic situation with his father, they end up having a duel, you know, a fight. So even if it's not a physical fight, it could be a verbal fight. It could be a mental fight where every time you're around this person, you're mentally having to control your anger, or you're mentally having to bite having to bite your tongue and not say what you really feel because you don't want to get into a confrontation with this person. It could be a heavy battle, and some people don't realize this is what's going on inside of a lot of people because people put on that pretend face and do the politically correct thing instead of actually saying what they're thinking or how they feel, even if they say it without being angry or without cursing. Like Luke, he came to this realization in his mind, like I am really like him, and he accepted it, right? But some people don't want to accept it. They'll still deny that they're like this person. Warning signs. We develop dysfunctional coping habits. These habits are the 6 signs that you're a man with daddy issues. Number 1, you're aloof. You focus your mind on things other than what's going on in your relationships. You miss cues from those around you that your relationship needs your attention. Number 2, you're unconcerned. It's difficult for you to walk a mile in someone else's shoes because you're not comfortable in your own. You find it impossible to relate to others' experiences emotionally. What concerns you most is how something impacts you. That one's interesting, right? You're disrespectful. Number 3, it's not on purpose. You just don't have a clue how to show respect. I think many people go through that, male or female. Like I often say, and not to be vulgar or disrespectful, but I grew up with my mother from a very young age calling me a bitch. I didn't know that other women didn't grow up under those same circumstances and conditions. So, me playfully, in my mind, playfully calling someone that when I was younger, it wasn't until I was in my 20s that I realized some people weren't raised that way and they don't like that word at all. And they get very, very offended. They don't care if you feel like you were joking. They don't want to be called that word at all. But again, I didn't know. How do you know what you don't know until you go out into society? And I promise you, it happened for the first time. This was my thought. I was like, oh, why is she acting like ain't nobody never called her? Oh, maybe nobody ever called her that before. Like it was just that quick in my mind, that realization. Like, oh, this doesn't happen with everybody. And even now, being in the South, a lot of women say that. I don't use that word. I don't like that word. I've never called anybody that word, and I don't want nobody calling me that word. And it's really strange when you grow up around people who that's all they say, jokingly or not jokingly. It becomes like a term of endearment, almost like the N word among certain women. And again, you're raised or conditioned to think that there's nothing wrong with it. So when you're around somebody who gets offended for the first time, it's like, wow, what just happened here? What's wrong with her? Why does she have an attitude? But you don't know. That was just a real life example for me. Number 4, you're commitment phobic. You learned early in life not to rely on people. They were unreliable. They'll always disappoint you, and that hurt. To avoid being hurt again, you avoid making commitments. Number 5, you're irresponsible. You were never able to figure out how to do things right. It seemed like the rules always changed. Rather than be blamed for things going wrong when you do everything to try to get them right, it's easier just saying, hey, it wasn't my fault. So that's a lack of accountability and responsibility. To not even acknowledge that something was done in error, which happens, right? Number 6, you're unaffectionate. If you were touched at all as a child, it was to have the crap beat out of you. Showing affection by touching someone doesn't come naturally for you and feels awkward. All right, the good stuff. Overcoming these issues in my life started with a willingness to forgive my dad. I came to a point where I realized there was nothing to be gained by holding on to resentment for him not meeting my expectations. Once I arrived at adulthood, it was too late for him to do anything about it. Once I forgave my dad, then I stopped looking for him to make things right in our past. It was then that I was able to form my identity and to no longer be afraid of being like him. And I was able to see the good in him alongside the bad. I didn't get there without help from my wife, who encouraged me to get help from a counselor. She saw the good in me alongside the bad. I've also learned from men who have acted as mentors in my life. With the help I put my efforts into developing the good in me. I learned and strengthened habits that counteracted my dysfunctional coping habits. There's a constant struggle between light and dark in every man's life. It does none of us any good to focus on one side without acknowledging the presence of the other. You'll never have to face Darth Vader in a lightsaber battle. But when you choose to face the dark side of your daddy issues with a willingness to forgive your father, you'll be taking an important first step towards a happier life and healing in your relationships. The question, what have you done to face your daddy issues? I am a life coach. If you would like a free 15-minute discovery session, you can inbox me here on YouTube. Thanks for watching. I hope this was helpful. Love y'all. Later.